Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about the differences between the sexes when it comes to sexuality, because we've talked about sexual insecurities, we've talked about insecurities and complaints and problems and behaviors to avoid in relationships these last few weeks. We've talked about relationship dynamics, we've talked about confidence in the bedroom, we've talked about all of those things. And you guys, from the response I've been getting so far, at the time of recording anyway, has been great. And even though there was the hiccup kind of last week with me not being able to do the live stream because my internet was out, hopefully, I mean, I'm recording this now just kind of before or just after the video that I put out on Saturday. And so, I've whether or not the stuff, everything else goes off without a hitch, who knows? But today I want to talk about the differences between the sexes when it comes to sexuality, because we've talked about sexuality before and how sexuality, unlike certain other things in this sphere of communication, sphere of information, is a spectrum. Why? Because both men and women can sit on the same point along that spectrum, and the spectrum goes from heterosexual to homosexual, and so you can have, rather unsurprisingly, homosexual men, homosexual women, bi women, and straight men and straight women. Easy, simple, straightforward. The levels of emotion and things can all sit in the same boundaries, and so there you go. But I'm sure that there are some of you that will go, but what about asexuality and pansexuality? Pansexuality is so broad that it muddies everything. Asexuality is seemingly trying to remove yourself from this spectrum to a degree, in which case it doesn't really... I'm not going to be going into that because, again, trying to go into those things, it's either too broad or too removed, and so as a result it muddies the conversation a little bit in regards to what I want to talk about. And so the thing I want to get across here that relates back to everything else that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks is that everyone's perceptions are slightly different, and there are some perceptions that are different just because you're a dude and just because you're a girl, and so it's this split, and this is part of the reason why sometimes the ways that we communicate with each other become much more difficult, especially when it comes to how sexuality in recent times has become so political, and how the communication between men and women at times has become very political. And so, I want to just boil all of this stuff down to what we've got. In which case, I'm going to be talking about the differences first, and then we'll talk about why what sense we can make from that afterwards. So, in regards to sexuality, there are a couple of studies that were done a few years ago. I'm going to be referencing two of them. I believe there are at least a couple more, but there are two that I have. And as my internet's down at the moment, I can't pull up every piece of information that I had in my notes at the moment. So I've got most of the stuff here, but not all of what I wanted to reference so much, unfortunately. And so as a result, though, the two main studies that I'm going to be referring to, so that you can Google them yourselves, is Chivers et al. From 2004 and Lipper from 2006. Lipper spelled Lippa, and Chivers spelled Chivers et al. And so in that first study, the 2004 study, Chivers et al. Put all of their unfortunately I don't have the numbers down for their sample sizes, but they took a group of men and women, and they had both gay men and straight men, and lesbian women and straight women, and they went, right, what we're going to do is find out how good you are at predicting your own arousal to sexual stimulus. And it wasn't physical sexual stimulus, it was purely visual, audio-visual. And so what they found was that men were very good at predicting what they'd be attracted to, what they'd be aroused by. Women, not so much. So men were able to men's mindsets were very in line with their bodies. Women's were far more open and general and flexible in regards to what they were sexually aroused by. So how did they do this? Right, well, what they did was with the group of men, because because I believe they started with a group of men and then did the women afterwards as a counterpoint. They went, right, we're going to stick men in front of porno. They had girl on girl porno, guy on guy porno, and then guy on girl. And they went, right, we're going to measure things like your heart rate, your pulse, blood pressure, all that kind of thing, the normal stuff, and we're also going to measure how sexually aroused you get, how physically aroused you get in terms of readiness for intercourse. So in guys, it would be an obvious erection. In women, it would be, I imagine, blood flow changes and things like that, swelling of the clitoris and so on and so forth, and the opening of those blood vessels and all that kind of thing. In which case, what it came down to was they went, right, guys, watch these, see what happens. Rather unsurprisingly, the straight guys went, well, I'm straight. In which case, they only really got aroused by the straight and the lesbian porn. The gay men, for the most part, went, well, I'm gay. And so as a result, were only really interested in the gay porn, some of which showed some interest or some reaction to the straight porn because they found the guy in that video, in that film, stimulating, but otherwise there was no real response. Whilst then they went and did the same thing with women, and what they found was across all of them, across the 3 different videos that they showed, the responses from the women that they had were all basically the same, regardless of what the women said they were in terms of straight or lesbian. And so as a result, one of the things that stands out from that is that, firstly, people have their own way of interpreting their experience, in which case, women, we already know, have a higher emotional and kind of psychological level to certain areas of sex that men don't have to rely on so much and don't engage with as much, because those are things that are more home building and bonding activities that men don't usually go through with other men in their day-to-day anyway. And it goes back to the whole caveman thing, where you had women as a bonding group around a home space, in terms of a home camp where they would gather and look after each other, whilst the larger, stronger males would be out hunting, drag a mammoth back, whatever. In which case, it makes sense the arousal would happen across the board when it comes to those kind of situations. Because again, you look at some of our closest relatives, bonobo chimpanzees, for instance, and they're all about the sex and they're all about the bonding. And so, it's not necessarily a surprise that some of our ancestors, then turning into us as we are today, had that kind of breadth of interest to one degree or another. But then the thing that comes out of this, more so than anything else, is that everyone's perceptions are their own. You might, as a guy, you probably know what you are and where you're going and what you're into, and it's fairly simple for you. As a girl, you might not be, but it might not be as simple, but at the same time, you've still got the thing that you decide. Yeah? You've got your own criteria, you've got your own things, you've got your own way of working. And this relates back to some of the complaints that in relationships and things that we were talking about this week, as well as some of the insecurities that we were talking about last week, where you've got your own checklist in your head of what you want. One of the things that I said in regards to the general insecurities around sex was, you need to know what you want and you need to accept yourself for what you want. Just because you can, there's more flexibility to the sex that gets you going, or the porno that gets you going, the fantasies that get you going, whatever. Just because there's more flexibility to that doesn't mean that your real world situation wants you to play those out. It's that kind of element of it. And so then the other study, the Lipper study from 2006, found that women with a stronger sex drive were more willing to enjoy their flexibility rather than not, which again isn't really hugely surprising. But again, it's there, but it shows that the intensity in relationships and the intensity of someone's desires relative to what they're seeing, what they're perceiving, and what those desires override, also make a big difference on how they interact with people, what they want, how they want to get it, all those kind of things. And so when I've pointed this out in the last videos over the last couple of weeks, where everybody is different, everyone needs to communicate, everyone needs to appreciate that no one's perfect, that everyone has their own way of doing things and all the rest of it, this shows this more than anything else to me. And one of the reasons I say that is because ordinarily we go, well, a straight guy and a straight girl want the same thing, right? They want that it's just a broad umbrella of they want a partner from the opposite sex. Draw a line, that's it. That's their thing. Everything else that's specific is kind of limited. Some girls like tall guys, some guys like short girls, blah blah blah. That's fine. We'll just leave it at that. And that's kind of reductionist, because even here we can go, well, actually no, they're just between men and women who may proclaim to be the same thing. There is a difference in rigidity or flexibility in regards to the stimulus that they will enjoy, or the stimulus that will evoke a response, or elicit a response. And so it's important to take all these things kind of on board, because again, as things are becoming more political in regards to sex and in regards to the interactions between men and women, or even the interactions between women and men and all those kind of things, where the more political these things get, the more harmful they get to the relationships we have. And they only get more political because we don't sit down and talk about it. We don't sit down and look at the evidence and actually just compare our experiences. One of the things that I love to do is sit down with Hannah and just talk about the way that we experience the world differently, because then it allows me a greater understanding of the person I care about, and I'd like to think that it provides her the same in return. It's an opening up. And in regards to the number of people who have recently come out and made more noise about how bi people are kind of being kind of pushed to one side in various places, or how sometimes it can be very difficult. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, sure, I can understand how it would be difficult when you've got these groups of feelings inside you that are all clustered together and related to, oh, this I feel for women, or this I feel for men, and this is kind of what I'm looking for just in a partner, and whether it comes from one side or the other, I can happily appreciate those things. Or as said, it's a spectrum, so you've got some people who are bi but more inclined towards women, bi but more inclined towards men, and then you've got the responses to that usually being that if a bi woman, for instance, is with a man, then no, you're not bi, you're straight. If she's with a woman, then no, you're just a lesbian. And so it's a case of, pick. And it's like, no, these people have their own perceptive filters. They have their own thing. And so just because they know how they might feel inside in response to certain people and certain things, you need to appreciate the difference. Yeah, we are such a varied group of people in the 7-odd billion that we've got living on this planet. Have the conversations, open up, and don't. The thing that really ticks me off is when people are talking about their experience and then someone tries to politicize it. Don't politicize it, just compare. It's fine if you're a lesbian who wants X, Y, and Z, or you're a gay guy who wants X, Y, and Z in the partners that you want. But then if a person goes, well, I've always liked the just kind of very old school traditional relationship between a man and a woman, the kind that you would see in a 50s film, and that's kind of where I would like to plan my relationships, plan my life, as long as I could find a partner that would appreciate that too, then you shouldn't jump down someone's throat for that. I've seen that happen on at least, well, in fact, the number of times I've seen that happen has been considerable. But it's like, stop the judgment, stop the trying to throw yourself into other people's relationships as some kind of arbiter of what is right or wrong, whether it's from a traditionalist point of view where you're turning around to gay and lesbian people and going, you're terrible, you shouldn't be allowed to be like this, or you're a highly progressive person trying to shame someone for their just more maybe traditional, quaint kind of ideal of a relationship. If it's something that works for them, then fine. And this is why, again, all of what I've been saying over the last few weeks relates to only you and the person you're with. Communicate, be honest, be open, be patient and accepting of one another because you care about each other, right? That's why you're in this situation to have those conversations anyway. So, do those kind of things. Don't judge on other people. And when it comes to differences in sexuality, again, one of the things that I very much enjoy is talking about the different ways that we perceive. Although one of the things that always stands out to me is when I'm talking to gay guys, especially, and because I'm a man, and I'm like, no, just don't. It's, you go, that's an attractive guy, and a grey box turns up in my head going, identified, male. That's it. No emotional response, no nothing else. It's literally just an acknowledgement of the fact that that is a human person who happens to be male in terms of biological sex. Fair enough. And yet they're like, oh, well, you're missing out. And it doesn't make sense to me because they're missing out on as much of the human race as I am by missing out on men because they are gay and so have made sure that they are removed from women. And so it's a criticism that doesn't always make sense. It's a kind of comment that doesn't always make sense to me. But that's the kind of comment that, again, then when taken to a more of an extreme rather than just a kind of off-the-cuff response, that's where you get people being shamed and really negative kind of fallout from this stuff. And none of that helps anybody. Don't insert yourself into other people's relationships unless there is evidence of harm being done. And otherwise, within your own relationships, have these conversations. If your boyfriend or girlfriend says that they're bi or whatever else, sit down, have the conversation, understand why they're with you instead of with someone else. There have been a couple of friends of mine who have been so threatened by the fact that their partner maybe sexually appreciates the entirety of the human race, rather than just men or just women. And as a result, then they feel kind of threatened because now they've got twice as much potential competition or so. And it's like, well, no, sit down. What made you stand out among above all those other billions of people? Yeah? Because then, you should take it as a victory. You have beat out not just half the population, but all the population to get such a wonderful person. Yeah, reframe it. Just spin it around the other way, and you'll feel better for it, and your relationship will do better for it because it opens up all of those kind of open, honest conversation options that you can then follow down, find out more about each other, find out if you're in the right place or not, and then grow and thrive and go through all those 6 stages of intimacy and then die. Yep, had to bring it down at the end there. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you found this interesting. Hope you found it useful. Again, the studies they just show how there are so many little different things. The even something as fairly simple to understand, all told. Attracted to one group of people, attracted to other group of people, attracted to both groups of people to varying degrees. That's not a difficult, conceptually, that's not a difficult thing to understand. But when it comes to the amount of nonsense that goes on around it, and how unwilling people are to talk about it, like actually have a proper, decent conversation between people from the different sides of it, it breaks things down. And, that's why we keep seeing it become more political, because political is the way that we get change. But it's not the way that you facilitate better small relationships just between a couple of people or a handful of friends. So, I'd like to see more open, honest discussion. Again, Got a live stream hopefully coming up tomorrow, provided the internet doesn't go down again. In which case, if you guys would like to talk about the various complaints and issues that we've been talking about from relationships this week, and if you'd be interested to talk about this a little bit more in regards to just the differences in perception and working around sexuality some more, then by all means we can continue to talk about that as well. But otherwise, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care.